As teaching elder Rick Phillips, Calvary Presbytery. The overture arose from our presbytery. I think it might be helpful to discuss what our intents were. This is now the second General Assembly since the Revoice Conference in early 2018, and there was a considerable amount of distress to the unity and the concern of our denomination that resulted from that. I think it's an understatement at all to say that it has been provocative. There's been a lot of people who've been provoked. The question has been raised by many of our parishioners as to whether the PCA remains committed to what we have believed and taught and practiced about these highly contentious issues in our society, whether we still maintain them today. So the purpose of the overture is that we will produce peace, that we will relieve this distress by speaking the truth. And I've heard many people say, well, we don't need to speak to it. I believe that if we want peace, if we know there's concerns, are we still trusting the things we did, then we will affirm that in a way that will cause us to say, okay, we're working on these things. We're learning how to minister in these contexts. But in the midst of this context that has been very provocative, language very alarming to our church members, our General Assembly is not adopting this document, but is saying this is good, faithful teaching, and we would commend it to be distributed. Take a look at this. This is what we want to set before you. Now, the Overtures Committee has recommended a study committee, and that work could be done. It might be one that's distinctive to us, but that would be 3 years after Revoice. The disunity would continue. It would undoubtedly be very contentious. If the study committee took 2 years, it would be 4 years. Now, I am not saying, let's just say something, because if people are upset. The Nashville Statement, I think, as you heard, fathers and brothers, as it was read, is a very faithful, temperate language, very moderate, very careful, providing both sides, and it sets forth these truth issues. Now, another objection is what we need to be doing is not making statements, but doing the tender ministry, loving to people. But of course, it's our ministers who will do that. We have young ministers who are concerned about this. I think all of us are dealing with issues that are upon us that perhaps we've not dealt with a lot. And so what we ought to be doing is setting forth some guidelines. Here's how you should be thinking about this. And so the Nashville Statement, as it's commended, would not only greatly unify or remove the threats to unity in our denomination on this issue, but it actually would help those who are doing the tender, compassionate, loving ministry. Here's the categories, think in this way. We would be commending that. And the third thing is, it's not only disrupted the unity of our church, it has disrupted our relationship with other church bodies. My own congregation, I had, just an example, I had a relationship, a ministry opportunity with a local Christian university. It was going really well. We were going to be able to minister the gospel to a whole student body we'd not had access to before, until a board member of that university discovered the Revoice Conference and some articles about it. And our ability to minister in that context was cut off, or was at least challenged, because there were questions as to whether the PCA is changing. Are we still committed to the Bible's teaching on these issues so contentious in our society? Now, this morning, in our stated clerk's support of our remaining in the National Association of Evangelicals, he made the very persuasive argument that we need to stand together with our fellow evangelicals in these highly contested areas in the culture. Well, among the conservative evangelical denominations, the document that is that source of unity is the Nashville Statement. People will say, well, it's a parachurch document, and it, as such, has the effect of uniting church bodies. If we were to say this is faithful teaching, we would be signaling to these other denominations, the good old PCA, they're standing with us in the culture. But if we do not, if we say no to that, we are inevitably signaling what I dearly hope we do not wish to signal, that we do not stand. We'll do our own thing. We will not stand with you. Now, none of this would be worthwhile if the Nashville Statement did not commend itself. It was read. I think it commends itself. Temperate in language, well-balanced, biblically faithful, both for the reasons of pursuing unity in our denomination. We must speak, fathers and brothers, Secondly, to provide counseling, guidance for those who were going to do the ministry. And then for our relationship, standing together as we voted this morning with our fellow evangelicals in these matters. I think the Overtures Committee was very prudent in recommending that this assembly would adopt Overture 4. And therefore, I would urge you.
That was outstanding. You had 10 seconds left.